everyone. 皆さん、こんにちは. Welcome to the Japan America Society of Georgia's Have a Coke and Tea with the Society. Today we have a very special media edition and membership spotlight. So my name is Yoshi Domoto. I am the Executive Director of the Japan America Society of Georgia. So thrilled that you are tuning in, but I am enjoying a nice cold tea as part of our series. But today we are so thrilled to welcome Mr. Trevor Williams from GlobalAtlanta. Trevor-san, konnichiwa, and what are you enjoying today?
Konnichiwa, arigato. I am having a coffee out of my GlobalAtlanta mug.
Nice. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and what kind of work you do.
So I'm the managing editor of GlobalAtlanta, which your viewers will probably know is an international business news service here in Atlanta. We cover the way Atlanta connects with the world. So we write about business, trade, economic development, culture, all of those topics with an eye toward how our city, again, connects with the rest of the world. And as far as I know, we're still unique in that regard. Still the only publication that I've found that is covering a city's global connections. And we hope to continue to do that for the long run. But I'm a journalist by training. I started 14 years ago now, if you can believe it, fresh out of University of Georgia's Grady College of Journalism. And we can get into later on some of my background if you'd like, but that's what I'm doing, writing stories, hoping to make the world a little less confusing for everybody.
Well, we certainly commend all the great things you're doing at GlobalAtlanta, our favorite global and local media company, right? So that definitely is a unique aspect that you all have a very special niche, I think, in the industry. So thank you for that, all you do. But you are global and local, but how did you get first introduced to Japan?
Well, I have to go back to 7th grade. I grew up in Columbus, Georgia, which, as you know, and your viewers will know, is the home of AFLAC, which at that point I had no clue had any connection to Japan. And I still have only been to the AFLAC headquarters in Tokyo, not in Columbus. But going back to Columbus, we were a city that I think was probably a little bit forward-looking in terms of having some Japanese language programming. So I had a brief stint with Japanese language in 7th grade, but didn't really stay connected with Japan until I got this job at GlobalAtlanta. So I started seeing just how important the Japanese economy was for Georgia and how many investors we had coming in. So started writing quite frequently about new automotive suppliers and all kinds of investors coming to Japan. So decided to make a reporting trip way back in 2011, and that's been kind of my anchor, but have continued to learn more about the country and its connections with Georgia over the years, and a lot of it thanks to the Japan American Society.
Well, nice. Well, I know you have a very unique perspective growing up in Columbus, and then now the whole world is kind of your oyster a little bit, right? But so how has kind of growing up in a city like Columbus, who's grown up over the years itself, kind of affected your kind of professional work now?
Yeah, it's interesting because I really had no international bent to my upbringing at all. My parents didn't have a passport. My mom still doesn't. You know, I had no international travel experience when I was younger. The extent, I was just thinking about this with my mom the other day. I mean, the extent of my international connectivity at that time was hosting a Chinese foreign exchange student, you know, for Christmas one year through an international exchange program. So I really did not have any aspirations to be globally engaged or any inspiration in my family or really in the city at large. I mean, I studied Spanish in school, but there was no real, sense for future relevancy. It was just kind of like do this and get it done. But when I did have a mentor in Columbus who ended up going to China to live, and I followed him there. My first year of college, I was kind of trying to be an adventurous young man, and I had two different mentors, actually. One who was sort of a writing mentor who invited me to Jordan, and then another more kind of spiritual mentor who invited me to China. So I took them up on those offers, and once I had traveled to those two places internationally, it kind of stuck. And I started learning Chinese in college at the University of Georgia, and then just tried to continue to be internationally engaged and lucked into this job as I was graduating, which I can get into more if you'd like.
Well, nice. Yeah. Well, I know the political kind of government and business relations between countries are very important, but it usually is the grassroots exchange that kind of jumpstarts a lot of people's interest in different cultures, right? So we certainly commend your work with your mentors and kind of traveling abroad, and I'm so glad that Japan has a special place in your heart as well. But so before we kind of go a little bit more into Global Atlanta and kind of your professional work, what are some of your hobbies? I know some of your hobbies has kind of a connection to Japan as well. So tell us about kind of what you like to do on your spare time.
I do like to read. I do that quite a bit. Some of it is work related, but some of it is for pleasure. I like to read. My favorite type of books to read would be narrative nonfiction. A lot of people don't really know what that is, but it's people enjoy it when they see it. It's basically books that are written in narrative form, almost like it would be a fiction book, but tend to tell a true or based on a true story or have some sort of connection to a current day topic that is being explored through the work. So I really enjoy that, and that's kind of my dream, is kind of to write some of those books eventually. Otherwise, I do a lot of these days hanging around out around the house in Dunwoody here with my family. I've got 2 kids, 5 and 2, 2 sons. And so we do a lot of playing outside, going for walks, things like that. I play guitar. That's probably my main other hobby besides those things. So I use it as a way to kind of decompress at the end of the day. I also sing. I haven't been doing that live or in church or anything lately, but have recorded music in the past and written a lot of songs that I will not share with you today. but that's kind of a way to unwind for me. Really enjoyed that.
Well, I know you used to play a lot of baseball too, and that was kind of what I was referring to about your connection with Japan, as I know Japan's big into baseball.
Oh, baseball. Yeah. Yeah. So that was more about my upbringing. Unfortunately, I'm still very into watching baseball, especially when October comes around. I don't do much throughout the season just because I'm too busy. But when I graduated high school, I played baseball in Columbus at Columbus High School. And when I graduated, I decided I would focus on my academics because I wasn't quite good enough to play at the levels that I would have wanted to, and knew that I didn't have really a future walking on at UGA or anything. So I decided to kind of let it go. But before I did, after graduation, I took a trip to uh, 14 different baseball stadiums in 2.5 weeks, and ended up uh, so now I've gotten over the halfway point of visiting all the U.S. baseball stadiums. I think I'm at 19 or 20 now out of the 30 something, and some I have visited multiple times when they've been new incarnations of an older stadium where the older one's been knocked down and the new one's been built. I've done that in Philadelphia and in New York as well. But yeah, so watching baseball for sure. Particularly being a fair weather Braves fan. I grew up watching the Braves and had just really started paying attention when they went from worst to first, for those who remember, in the early 90s, and went to the World Series to face the Twins. Got jaded over the years as we won 14 different division titles and only one World Series, but definitely is still following the Braves, and especially have been interested to see the connections between Hank Aaron, who just passed away, and Japan's home run king. I'm forgetting his name right now, but during my most recent trip to Japan in 2019, I loved seeing baseball in action, hearing people talk about the rivalries between the certain teams around Japan, and then being in Osaka, I was at a hotel, and I heard a sound that was instantly familiar to me out the window. It was the clink of an aluminum bat out in the park. And I just loved hearing that. It just took me right back to childhood. So it was nice to see that connection in action for sure.
Hopefully, you can visit some ballparks in Japan as well, and make your journey kind of a global journey into all the different baseball stadiums, right?
Yeah, I'm so mad that I haven't been able to do that on those 2 trips. One was in January, so I don't think the season has started. And then this most recent one, I really just didn't have time in between all the things that I was doing. I got some recommendations, but never was able to make it happen. And from what I understand, it's much more lively in Japan in terms of the fan chants and the way people get into the fan action for sure.
Yeah, definitely a unique experience. So certainly next time. But so let's talk a little bit more about Global Atlanta. I know you all have a very unique history too. So can you talk about the history of Global Atlanta? I think it started out as Global Fax, maybe for those of you who remember the fax machines and how important it was back in the day. But how has it become one of the most successful, I guess, media companies here in Georgia?
Well, we're still trying to make it fully successful, but yeah, it has a long history. It's been around for 30 years now. This is actually our 30th year in existence, in various incarnations, as I mentioned. Um, it did actually start off as something called the Global Business Reporter, even preceding Global Facts, which, if you can believe it, and if I was at my office right now, you would see the second issue ever of Global Business Reporter on the shelf. And uh, interestingly enough, the headline story on that issue really gets at where we're kind of going today. It says the Southeast at a crossroads in terms of economic development and foreign investment. And that was interesting that that was the kind of driving ethos even from the beginning, and is now sort of part of what we're looking to do now, which is really focus more on retain our Atlanta and Georgia focus, but also broaden it more to the South. And we can talk about that more as we go if we'd like. But um, in terms of the origin story, our founder, Phil Bolton, had been a reporter on the Macon Telegraph newspaper in Macon, Georgia, which is home to YKK, the original Japanese investor in Georgia, we should mention. But he was there, I think, right around the time that YKK had come. But he had also been in Milledgeville, and then he ended up working for an international credit card payment processing kind of trade publication that took him abroad to France, where he had spent time in his childhood. So he knew France well, spoke French, spent time as a freelancer there in the late 80s. Came back to and also, I should mention, he had been a Peace Corps volunteer in Africa, in Kenya. And so he had this very global mindset from early on in his life. So he came back to Georgia. He decided, what am I going to do with myself when I come back? The Olympics had just been announced, and that's when the idea struck that he could report on international news from a local perspective. So he launched that Global Business Reporter. It eventually became Global Fax, which was distributed through fax machine. And Phil always liked to tell me that about the glory days of 16 different computers sending out faxes to multiple telephone number lists in downtown Decatur. And when I joined in 2007, it was already well established as a newsletter. Global Atlanta was kind of the name of the first email newsletter, actually. So it was sort of operating on a hybrid model where you had the fax machine still sending stuff out, but Global Atlanta was the email portending the online environment to come. He knew that the fax was going to be phased out and that there was going to be an online revolution, I guess. And so Phil's always been forward-thinking, innovative in terms of the use of technology to reach people with the news. We've never had a print, thank goodness, and so we never had to manage that transition, the sunsetting of print to the transition to digital. And so now we've since I joined, we've kind of steadily leaned more into the digital side and are exclusively online now. We have multiple newsletters, including a Japan newsletter where we send out every month a summary of our reporting on Japan's connections with Georgia. So we write a lot about new Japanese investments coming in. One story I'm working on right now is a new Japanese language program at a 6 to 12 women's academy in the city of Atlanta. So we're always looking for those stories, and we're hoping that your members will subscribe to that. You can subscribe to as much or as little as you'd like. Our sort of flagship newsletter is our weekly briefing that we send out every week, but we also have a daily newsletter. And through the use of technology, which I will not get into too deeply, I mean, basically we can send out a lot of newsletters without a lot of extra work. And so you can kind of get country, region, or topic related news sent to you on things like diplomacy, economic development, trade, or countries like Japan, China, India, continents like Europe. So it helps us collate all of our reporting and send it to people in a customized way that is lets them get what they want more quickly, basically.
Very nice. I know you mentioned all your different types of newsletters and articles that you have on your website, but I know you do so much more. So, what other types of services and products do you offer for perhaps your sponsors, advertisers? I know you're starting to do programming and events now too, and you've been featured on a lot of our webinars and other organizations' events as well. But tell us a little bit about kind of beyond the normal newsletters and articles you have online.
Yeah, we noticed that, and sorry, I'm gonna take my headphones off because they just died. So they're just acting as a muffler right now. So yeah, we've kind of always been engaged in some kind of programming. It's not that it's completely new, but we've been trying over the last few years to systematize it a bit and really utilize our strengths, which is the journalistic reporting. 90% of what we report on never gets into the newsletter. It never gets into the stories that we write on the website. Really, the story that you see is really just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the information we collect. So we've been trying to take that information and put it in some kind of useful format, which events really allow us to do. They allow us, through our moderation, through our questioning, through our sourcing of speakers, they enable us to really um, take those kind of disparate facts that we've been collecting and create a conversation with them. So we started really our first event series in 2016. It's called Consular Conversations, where we interview a different diplomat every single month. And those had been luncheons that we were hosting at our sponsor Miller and Martin, where we, myself and a diplomat from another country who's based in Atlanta would sit up in the front of the stage and would basically talk about what's going on in their country, how they're connecting with Atlanta and Georgia, the South, and foster opportunities for networking and connections. So we've continued that model. We've moved it into a virtual setting as well, and are kind of leaning into that right now, where we're virtually chatting with diplomats who are not based in Atlanta, but are actually still have responsibility over Georgia. And so, think people that we would not be able to talk to normally in the luncheon format. But we've done events on exports. We've done a series on Latin America, which has been really great. And then we're working on an author series right now, where we take Georgia voices in international relations and business and sort of try to amplify them to tell their stories. So there's really quite a bit that we're working on right now. And then aside from our own events, we aggregate a calendar of the international community events. So we basically have the one-stop shop, or the go-to place, if you will, for getting a snapshot of what's happening in the international community. So organizations like the Japan America Society and others will place their events on our calendar, and our readers can go there to get that panoramic view of international community. So we send out a newsletter with events, just events and jobs actually, every Monday morning. So it helps people kind of plan their week. So we pepper our events in there and mix them in, but we're trying certainly to raise the profile of all the various great organizations that are doing amazing things around town, and certainly don't want to detract from those who are adding vibrancy to the international community.
Well, it sounds like you've done so many innovative things already. But what is the future of Global Atlanta? What do you think is the future of the media industry in general? And tell us kind of some of new projects maybe you have coming up.
Yeah, that's a big question. So a lot of what we're going to do at Global Atlanta has been going to be continuing what we're already doing, and just formalizing it, systematizing it in a better way. And we're really trying to expand the readership. We find that we have sort of the nucleus. We've got about 10,000 readers, mostly in Atlanta and Georgia, who are dedicated and read quite a bit. But we find that a lot of those people are those who know that they're in an interconnected global economy and who really lean into that and embrace it. Whereas we feel like there are quite a number of people working for, say the Fortune 500 companies in Atlanta, and a lot of small and medium-sized firms that are very globally integrated, that really would benefit from the content that we have, that haven't really discovered it yet. And so that's, I think, where I'm really focused right now, is building that local readership, and then also keeping a broad mindset that there are potentially other cities and other places around the South that might benefit from the type of coverage that we do. So I would say if you look really far down the road, we're looking at potentially, replicating ourselves in other places, because we do kind of have a model that has been that is unrivaled at this point. So in terms of the media industry at large, that's a much bigger question, and probably one that we don't have time to talk about here. But I do see kind of a return to niche publications. I think we're in a good spot given that we are used for conducting business. Those that have community interest or just general interest, I think will have a little bit harder time because it's a lot harder to prove the return on investment for attending an event that costs you $40 or something like that. It's a lot easier if you can see the return on your bottom line. So I think we're in a good spot, and I think that we're going to honor Phil's legacy. He's continuing to be involved in the company, though he retired and has left it in my hands for better or worse. And we're going to continue to honor that legacy while moving ahead.
I think GlobalAtlanta is in very capable and professional hands, so I don't think Phil has anything to worry about. Do you have any special offers for our viewers tuning in, or how can people learn more about GlobalAtlanta and get involved and sign up?
Yeah, I think the best way is just to subscribe to our newsletters. I mean, everything we offer right now, and that's again another consideration about the future of media. Do you charge, or do you throw up a paywall, or do you try to offer your content for free and figure out how to monetize it in other ways? That's kind of the stance we've taken right now. So get in while you can. Right now, everything we have is free. We like I said, have I think more than 30 newsletters now. So, but you don't have to be overwhelmed with all that. You can just go and get the weekly or the daily or the events newsletter. We allow you to kind of customize your experience based on what you desire. So you can go to globalatlanta.com. There are multiple places there where you can subscribe to newsletters. There's a little envelope on the top you can click on, or multiple blanks, or you can just go to globalatlanta.com/newsletters, and that will allow you to see all the options. Of course, the Japan newsletter is right there among all the various countries that you can get, and you'll get that every month. And we have to thank again YKK for sponsoring our Japan coverage. We've been really indebted to them for helping us kind of get that off the ground. We now have more than 500 Japan-focused subscribers, and we hope to keep growing that. That's really going to be part of our future as well, like letting people get to the content more quickly that they want. We find that people are multidimensional, but at the same time, a lot of times they're, from a business perspective, they're really focused on one country or one region or one topic. For instance, we have an education newsletter. So an executive may not be interested in knowing what's going on in international education at the post-secondary level in Atlanta, but we have a lot of readers who really love to read about new study abroads or partnerships between Atlanta universities and those overseas. So we have a specialized newsletter for that. So that specialization is going to characterize what we do. But right now, the best way to know what's going on is really to subscribe.
Great. So everyone listening in, yeah, definitely subscribe to one or more, I guess up to 30 newsletters that you can get. And then all the events and job postings that go up on GlobalAtlanta is very kind of local and international at the same time. So it's very valuable to anyone living in Atlanta, Georgia, and throughout the Southeast too. So, but I know this past year has been a challenge for all of us, Trevor. But so before we kind of close out, any last words of wisdom or kind of advice, recommendations, messages of hope that you have for our viewers?
Yeah, I think one thing that we've experienced is that, while we have had difficulty like everyone, we found some silver linings, right? In the way that we've been able to use technology, and the way that we've been able to connect with new audiences, and the way that we've seen how important, again, international relations are. And sometimes it takes things getting taken away for you to realize how important they are. But I think there's been a newfound understanding, particularly when you mix in the politics of the last 5 years or so. there's a newfound understanding that we are interconnected and that we need these avenues for connection. And really our philosophy is that you're not going to care about what's happening around the world unless it is somewhat relevant to you or seen as relevant to you. And that's really the ethos behind our publication, that, you know, we display these opportunities or these connections that are already happening, so that you can find that what's happening out there is relevant in here. You know, it may be that your job is supported by exports. It may be that your university has an exchange program that opens a door that changes your life. It may be that you have a mentor that goes to China and changes your life. So what happens, you know, in a financial sense, definitely abroad affects us all. But also we want to illustrate that global, for lack of a better term, is an opportunity, not just a threat, right? We don't have to wait until trade takes away our jobs to acknowledge how important it is to us. It could be that trade is adding to our lives. It could be that international connections are enriching our lives, not just threatening us, as has been pointed out in some cases. So we don't want to be cheerleaders or blind cheerleaders for globalization without acknowledging the risks, but at the same, or the threats that there are, but at the same time, we want to ensure that we are telling the whole story.
Great. Well, thank you so much for all your support of the Japan American Society, Trevor, personally and through GlobalAtlanta. We appreciate that all you do. Keep up the wonderful work, and we'll see you hopefully next time, maybe in person. Yeah, so everyone be safe, be healthy, and tune in for our next edition of Have a Coke and Tea with the Society. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.
Arigato.